And we're back. It's Monday, November 17th. We're getting close to the holidays, and I'm here with Olivia again. And I wanted to just check back in on our skin health conversation last week, which was I thought really cool. I hope everybody who listened got something good out of it. Just previously, before we jumped on this recording, was speaking to Olivia about a couple things, a wide variety of things, and she may not have the most exciting answers for you guys today, but I do want to talk a little bit about Olivia in your practice because what you do is so interesting. We've talked about skin health, we've talked about digestion, weight loss, the whole gamut that I think functional medicine doesn't get enough credit for is like solving like this wide swath of health issues.
Hmm.
How long people are in these protocols for and like how long it takes them to really see outcomes. I'm curious because I know you said it's kind of it depends on the cases of
Yeah,
who's
yeah.
dealing with what, but
Mhm.
I'll start with this question. How often, how long is somebody in your practice for typically? And maybe
Mhm.
there's not a typical number, but from start to finish, results to or from problem to results or outcome,
Mhm.
what is your
Yeah,
typical like intake outtake process?
yeah, yeah. I love that question because mine is very specific. Like
Mhm.
in my tier one package, which I everybody enters into basically, where we do a round of blood work and the GI map, and then there's a couple sessions. It's typically 6 months or so,
Mm,
with a couple weeks in between each session, but ongoing support in between.
right.
The thing with functional medicine, it's very different from conventional medicine in a lot of different ways, but mostly in the sense that it's very personalized. And so every single protocol, every single process, every single patient is going to be so different, and that process is going to look different for every single person,
Right.
which is that to me is like the beautiful thing about it. But it's hard to answer questions like these because sometimes I work with people for a year and they
Mm,
don't see progress for until 6 months into it. Sometimes I work with people for they start to see progress within 3 months and then they're good long term. So it really just depends. Sometimes 3 weeks into a gut healing protocol, I hear people say they feel so much better already. So it's really hard to answer that question, and I think it's just because of the personalized nature of functional medicine, and every person is so unique, and in like a good functional practitioner is going to really take the time to get to know their patient, and really try to understand like what they're dealing with and their lifestyle because that plays a big role too, and what they can commit to in terms of time and resources for their protocol, what they're dealing with, how long they've been experiencing these issues. So it really just depends. And also too, when we're addressing the root cause, it's not like, say you come to me, Fran, for example, with digestive issues.
mm,
Most people come to me having dealt with these problems for years and years and years.
yeah.
So it's not like we can solve them overnight.
Right.
Especially when we're working on healing the root cause and healing holistically. And then we also have to take into consideration like a lot of work with functional medicine is about changing your lifestyle,
Right.
which
Right.
can be really cumbersome for a lot of people. It is hard. It's hard
Yeah.
to make changes to your lifestyle. And so, most chronic disease is lifestyle driven. And so that's what we're working on reversing is bad lifestyle habits as well, in
Yeah.
addition to addressing the root cause. And sometimes that takes time.
Yeah, I think it's just valuable for people to hear this because a lot of what I've written about previously on my newsletter is the time frames for just general fitness things, right? Even if somebody's not dealing with gut issues or other holistic health problems that they have been having trouble solving, the time frame needs to be elongated from like if you think it's going to happen in 3 months, it'll probably happen in 6 months, or if you think it'll happen in 6 months, maybe give yourself a year.
Hmm.
And yeah, it's really helpful to know that there's some there is a pretty standard like 6 months to a year time frame for this stuff to happen. I think also you have the privilege of with the people you work with, knowing that those people are a little bit more patient, right? Because
Mm,
most
yeah.
of the time, right? Maybe you can tell me otherwise, but most of the time I feel like those people who know how difficult it's been, having been through the ringer with all their issues, like they know, like, all right, I'm at the next stop of this journey, and even though
Yeah.
I'm working with Olivia, like she's not going to fix everything right away. Like there's almost it seems paradoxical, but there's almost like a built up sense of patience with your
Mm,
patients,
mhm.
PE. ending with TS,
Yeah.
that know that, all right, well, I'm here. This is going to be a little bit like maybe my last experience, but hopefully this one works. But I know if it's anything like the last experience, it won't be
Hmm.
solved overnight. Um, I'm really curious too because I think, like I said before, there's so many different things that you deal with in your practice. We talked about skin health and gut health and weight loss, all these other things. I want to know if there's maybe some other fringe cases of instances you've worked with patients that might be again on the unexpected side. Like
Hmm.
the skin thing was one that I wanted to spend a whole episode last week talking about because I thought I
Yeah.
was like, wow, like that's
Remarkable.
something I hadn't unpacked before. In whether it's been recently or in the past, however many years you've had your practice, what's another really interesting side effect of gut dysbiosis that you've dealt with that maybe a lot of people wouldn't expect there to be a gut
Hmm.
connection to? Like what were the symptoms that they were dealing with that they came to you with?
Yeah. There's, I have to think on that one.
Yeah.
I mean,
Like
there's,
migraines, or was there some sort of, maybe I don't know, like I'm thinking of other like a glandular issue or
Mhm.
something that maybe was kind
Mhm.
of out of left field a little bit for you, but you worked with them and maybe found some semblance of the solution, if not the full solution.
Yeah. I think what I'm thinking about right now, this one case in particular, and
Yeah.
there's a couple too that come to mind right away. Not always related to gut dysbiosis, although
Mm,
that always plays a role. But
yeah.
um, I had one client who uh, started to, after we worked on healing the gut, and this client didn't necessarily come to me with gut issues. It's
Mm,
not like they were experiencing pain or chronic bloating or
okay.
whatever
Yeah.
most people come to me for with gut issues. It was just like they wanted to see what was going on and they wanted to optimize. And I remember them telling me that their mood had improved, and they didn't even realize that they were like having
Wow.
maybe a low mood, but they mentioned it or like kind of said that it felt like a cloud had lifted. And that they were just feeling a lot better in terms of their mood, their energy levels, their motivation, which I thought was pretty remarkable.
Mm,
Again, and which is why I always say that like everything can be tied back to the gut.
yeah.
Sometimes we do need to go deeper than that, but a lot of things can be tied to the microbiome.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, skin health. But the first thing that came to mind for me when you asked me that question was this person that I knew that was working with. It was really just focusing on optimization, lifestyle optimization, trying to figure out what was going on with their microbiome, if anything, but they weren't necessarily symptomatic, but
Mm,
they had
wow.
noticed a really big improvement in energy levels and just like felt happier overall.
How long did that take? How long was that process from start to finish?
Yeah, that was about 3 to 5 months.
Wow. Okay.
Mhm.
So was
Mhm.
that, I guess, maybe frustrating for you in a way because it was somebody who wasn't necessarily like under duress like maybe some of your other patients,
Mhm.
but or had they did you have trust with them from the beginning, or was it kind of hard to diagnose exactly what they were looking for out of working with you? I've had scenarios like this before, which is why I'm curious.
Mm. Was it frustrating for me because they didn't have issues or?
Yeah, and you were trying to really nail down exactly what I know you said optimization was the focus, but were there moments of that process over the 3 to 5 months where you kind of felt like, I don't know if that worked or if there's any real
Mm.
progress happening here?
Yeah, yeah, that's such a good question. Honestly, no, because I see a lot of people who are just focused on optimization,
Yeah.
and they just want to see what's going on with their gut. They have the resources, they have the time, they want to just again see what's going on. Um, and they're just happy and grateful that they're like getting a deeper look. And
Mm,
most of those people are willing to do the work and changing their lifestyle. So I always kind of feel like it's a win, even if they don't necessarily have these like tangible, we don't have this like massive tangible outcome. But if they're changing their lifestyle for the better, I always feel like that's a win.
right. I asked these questions and wanted to make this kind of like these niche areas of gut health and microbiome the focus today because I think I told you before we started that I found a supplement over the weekend that was a gut focused, microbiome probiotic that
Mm-hmm.
essentially helps optimize the clearing of lactic acid. For those of you who don't know, that's essentially like when you get really tired and your muscles start to feel like they're getting heavier. It's
Hmm.
that feeling of uh, buildup in your muscle that your muscles are telling you to stop working. And I bought the supplement, full disclosure. I'm not going to shout it out because they're not sponsoring me or anything, but it was really cool to know that there is a probiotic out there that can essentially help you with endurance training. And I thought that was very, very interesting. Um, and a lot of people in the comments and the reviews of this supplement were saying that their sleep had improved and, other things related to their digestion and their gut health were improving. Sleep quality was an interesting one for me.
Hmm.
Is that something you get a lot from your patients, like better sleep and better ability to relax? Is that a common thread?
Definitely. Yeah. 100%. Because I feel like when you optimize your gut, you're able to, as we've talked about many times before, absorb nutrients better. A lot
Hmm.
of nutrients and amino acids like L-theanine or glycine that are responsible for like getting us into a deep sleep. There's also neurotransmitters and hormones that are synthesized in the gut by
Yeah.
healthy bacteria like melatonin and serotonin and dopamine. So yeah, 100%.
Wow. I am curious because I think I don't have problems sleeping per se, but I do feel like there are nights where, maybe I'll have a later dinner than I usually want to, and that's obviously going to affect my sleep. Um, are there ways to, I hate to use the word biohack because that's like I feel like such an overused phrase these days, but are there ways through these gut health protocols to kind of biohack your way into better sleep? Like let's say, for
Mm,
example, and maybe you know the answer to this, maybe you don't. Maybe I have a late dinner one night, but I take a probiotic like one of the ones you just mentioned right after that late dinner, and maybe it helps with the absorption of the food and maybe it digests a little faster. Because usually, correct me if I'm wrong, the inability to fall asleep is not just the melatonin, but like food is probably still digesting in your system,
there's
right?
so many things
Yeah.
actually. Yeah, so
Okay.
many variables.
Okay, so tell me about those variables. First, can I biohack my way into better sleep with a supplement, yes or no? And then two, what are those variables that impact the
Yeah.
ability to fall asleep faster?
Yeah. So I would say in terms of like biohacking your way into a better sleep, just with supplementation
Hmm.
alone, there's lots of things. And it really depends, like with my clients, I really try to get down to the bottom of like why they're not sleeping well, because that can also be, there can be so many reasons for that. Maybe they're stressed, maybe they are eating too late, maybe they're scrolling on their phone right before bed, maybe
Yeah.
they're sitting down all day, they're sedentary, they're not moving their body. Like there's so many different reasons. So then I'll try to, make my recommendations based on that. But if we're speaking on supplements and herbs and vitamins and minerals in particular, definitely one of my favorites is magnesium. I
Yeah.
think we talked about this. I love magnesium glycinate to help with sleep.
Yep.
Ashwagandha,
Oh,
which
okay.
is an adaptogenic herb, so it really helps with like modulating cortisol based on like where it's supposed to be, whether that's increasing it.
Mm,
Well, ashwagandha is really helpful for like lowering cortisol in particular. I don't love to use this one long term because it can influence estrogen, so it's not my favorite supplement to use long term, but that's
yeah.
something that can be helpful. L-theanine, which
Yeah.
is an amino acid that's responsible for well, it just plays a really big role in relaxation, so that can be really helpful.
Mm,
GABA is a really good one. GABA is a neurotransmitter that can be really helpful. I really love inositol too, which is structurally very similar to a B vitamin, but it's not a B vitamin, but it's actually found within the cells of all living things, but it can be really helpful for sleep. Helps to boost progesterone production, and progesterone, certain metabolites of progesterone bind to GABA, so there's like a connection there. Um, I would say those are my favorite for sleep in terms of supplementation.
okay. Anybody struggling with sleep, take notes. I have two follow-up questions there. I think we talked about ashwagandha previously on an episode, so I may have already asked this question, but you
Mhm.
mentioned the estrogen piece of it.
Mhm.
I've also heard just generally it's smart to cycle ashwagandha than stay on it long term because you need to develop a somewhat of a tolerance to cortisol, raised and lowered cortisol. Otherwise, if you're artificially lowering cortisol with the ashwagandha, it's not probably not great for you long term. Does that track in your view? Does
Mm.
that sound like it makes sense?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And the second question would be, with relation to all the supplements you just mentioned, um, does it matter what time of day you take those? Like, would it make the most sense to take those after a late dinner? Could you have them throughout the day and it would still make a late dinner kind of not a huge problem? Or would it be best to take them at a certain time of day or with food even? I know we talked about water soluble versus fat soluble things.
Mm. I would say it would be better to take them before bed, like
Mm,
30 to 60 minutes right before bed.
right before bed. Okay, cool.
Regardless of if you've had a late dinner or not, it's going to be better to take it before bed. Because in theory,
Interesting.
these things help you relax. They make you feel sleepy. So you don't want to take them in the middle of the day when you're trying to work or right
Yeah.
before a workout. You definitely don't want to take these things before a workout. Unless it's magnesium glycinate, you could take that directly after a workout.
Yeah.
Um, but you don't want to take ashwagandha or anything that's going to lower your cortisol because you need cortisol is advantageous when you're exercising. So you don't want to do anything to lower cortisol right before a workout.
Yeah, that's helpful to know. I was actually curious about that when I saw that there's a lot of supplements out there that have, not a lot, but there's a few that caught my eye that blend, I don't know if you've seen any, but that blend caffeine and L-theanine to be like a focus
Mhm.
supplement, which I think
Mhm.
sounds kind of counterintuitive, right? Because caffeine, yes,
Yeah.
it is going to raise your level of focus for a short period of time, and
Mhm.
L-theanine is going to relax you, but I would feel like I felt like I haven't taken any of those supplements. I feel like those two things would kind of cancel out. So to me, it
Mhm.
didn't always make sense to take L-theanine during the day. I don't know. What's your thoughts there?
Yeah. I think L-theanine can be relaxing in a sense that it's like if you're in like fight or flight,
Mm,
it's hard to focus, right? When you're tense, you're in fight or flight. But if the L-theanine can bring you back down and ground you, and then the caffeine turns, your focus on, that's what I would think would probably be the reason for that combination.
got it. That makes a lot of sense.
Mhm.
Last question, because we are keeping it relatively brief today. I wanted to kind of see what your thoughts on a good general probiotic or gut health routine from a
Mhm.
supplement standpoint would be. I know we just talked about a bunch that are good for sleep and digestion.
Mhm.
I know we've talked about, supplement protocols for certain types of people, but kind of the same question we ended the skin health conversation with when it came to what's something the average everyday person could do to make sure that their skin is in check.
Mhm.
What are protocols, supplements, anything of the above that somebody could do to just kind of make sure that everything is in check with their microbiome, even if they're not showing any symptoms? Maybe it's the same protocol you gave that one client, or
Mhm.
what are some easy steps somebody can take? Maybe we'll list them off just from general lifestyle to supplements to
Mhm.
sleep-wake cycle.
Yeah, I don't like to recommend probiotics just like without doing any testing because there's different
Mm,
kinds of probiotics and some people might benefit better from a certain probiotic versus another one.
yeah.
Also, if there's like mold toxicity or any MCAS or somebody showing a sign of like histamine intolerance, we want to make sure we're not using any probiotics that stimulate the
Mm.
release of histamine or
Uh,
histamine producing. So that's really important.
that's right.
Generally, I really like spore-based probiotics because there's some evidence that they can survive the harsh environment of the stomach acid and make their
Mm.
way into like the small intestines and the large intestines. Um, a probiotic, again, generally, if we're speaking in general terms, like a probiotic that's going to help with antioxidant activity and just propagating like a diverse range of bacteria in your gut.
Mm.
There is actually research, and this is fascinating to me, something I always recommend my clients do. One of the most important things that we can work in for our gut health is fiber, but not just fiber,
Yeah.
the variety of different kinds of fiber that you have in your diet. There
Right.
was a study that showed that eating 30 different plant foods every week was actually more beneficial for your microbiome than taking a probiotic every day.
Wow.
Reason for that is because when we think of the microbiome, there's trillions and trillions of different kinds of bacteria that live and exist within our gut. But they feed on what are called prebiotics. And so we can only get prebiotics from plant foods. Any protein, anything that comes from an animal, unless it's like kefir, like a dairy product that has probiotics in it.
Yeah.
Well, no, that's never mind. Scratch what
That's
I just
that.
said.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
What I'm thinking about is prebiotics. I mean, prebiotics are not necessarily found in any animal food, and
Right.
prebiotics are found within a wide variety of all different kinds of plant foods. It's not just fruits and vegetables, but also nuts and seeds, legumes like beans, lentils, and chickpeas, whole grains. All of these foods contain prebiotic fibers and different kinds of prebiotic fibers
Mm.
that then help to feed the different classes of bacteria that live within our gut.
Mm.
So it's
Okay.
that diversity, like the diversity of the bacteria in our microbiome that makes our gut so strong and so resilient. Actually, I read something else, or I was chatting with a colleague of mine, and he was telling me that he's been working, this is a whole other topic, and I know we don't have a ton of time, but just quickly, he's been working with something called, it's gross, but it's like the fecal, like transplant. So basically, what they do is they take the stool of indigenous peoples who like live in the Amazon, and then they like encapsulate the desiccated, the dried stool, and
Wow.
then you swallow them. So you're like literally eating somebody else.
Oh my God. Wow. Okay.
But there's a lot of research on this and how this can be so beneficial for for your gut,
Yeah.
basically, for optimizing your gut health. And the reason is these people, they don't live our modern lifestyle. They have like 4,000 different species of bacteria that live within their microbiome. The typical Westerner has 400.
Wow. Okay.
So it's the diversity of the kinds of bacteria in your gut that makes your gut so strong and so resilient, helps to optimize your metabolism, and um, keeps you healthy and happy, basically.
Wow. What a way to end the episode. I feel like I'm kind of not surprised only because I think you can see instances of that work in other ways, like throughout our society, like fertilizer is essentially just like cow manure, right? Like it's weird that
Mhm,
comes from cows in that way, but it essentially helps some soil grow faster and things like that. So like, there is this regenerative, like what goes in comes out and just gets recycled kind of aspect, which makes a lot of sense. The
mhm,
spore-based probiotics thing, that's really interesting. I'm guessing that means like mushrooms and like comes from mushrooms like cordyceps and things like that, or
mhm.
is it a little bit more niche than that?
It's more specific. The spore base, it comes from the soil,
Soil. Okay.
actually. Yeah,
Got
yeah,
it. Well, yeah, I think that piece is really interesting. I think the work that your friend colleague is doing with that
yeah, yeah.
should be really. I'd be curious to see how like that trial plays out.
Mhm,
Um, this piece that you said about the different types of vegetables, I think would probably raise a lot of eyebrows in like the carnivore community, people who are like very meat focused. They'd be like,
mhm,
oh, maybe I should eat more plants because I think there is something to the idea of consuming a wide variety of vegetables. It's something I've been trying to do a lot more.
mhm.
Um,
I'd love to run a GI map on those.
exactly, right? It's kind of like it's probably very weird because those are the people to me, they seem like they're always the ones saying like I feel great, I feel awesome, like I've got
Mhm.
so much energy, but maybe it's all a front. It's really hard to say, but
Yeah.
the conversation between carnivore, vegan, I think it's going to need another decade or two to play out to see which diet
Mhm.
is most superior. But
Yeah.
who knows? Anyway, that's really cool. I definitely want to maybe see if there's any recent new developments that come with that study that you just mentioned and see if we can spend an episode talking about that because that would be really
Mhm.
awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, it's a
Good.
short convo today, but I definitely appreciate talking with you about this stuff because I feel like people need to know just what they're getting into if they don't, whether they meet with you or somebody else in the functional nutrition space when it comes to dealing with their gut health. So,
Mhm.
just like what kind of time commitment they're signing up for and,
Mhm.
what outcomes they can expect. So I really
Mhm.
appreciate this.
Yeah. Yeah, of course. This was a good one. It was short, but yeah, it's good to highlight those things.
Awesome. Well, we may take a little break for the Thanksgiving holiday, but I think we'll be back in about a week or two. So,
Mhm. Okay.
we will be sure to see you then.
Yeah, sounds good.